Now we're going to be solving, and we're going to have double angles involved. So here we have cosine of 2x. And just keep in mind, they're not always going to have everything set equal to 0. Sometimes you have to move things over. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to substitute in an identity for cosine 2x. And what kind of leads me here is that there's already a sign involved. So I want to change it over so that it's only signs involved. So just remember there are three identities for cosine of the double angle, and that's actually the one that involves sine is going to be this. Alright, now I'm going to rewrite this. I don't need the parentheses because there's nothing to distribute, and I'm going to write it in standard form. Alright, now I'm going to think of this as like negative 2a squared plus a plus 1 equals 0. And now, the best way I think to deal with this negative coefficient in the front is to take it out and factor when there isn't. So you can kind of ignore the negative and just factor this part now. Alright, and guessing and checking, I know I have to start with the 2a and a to get 2a squared. And I know 1 and 1 would be 1. Those are my only options. And so to make sure that it foils out, I need to have a negative 1 times 2a and a positive 1 times a. Okay, so I can rewrite this now as negative 2. I could rewrite this now as a negative with a 2a plus 1, which is 2 sine x plus 1. And a sine minus 1. Okay, and now that we have it factored and it's set equal to 0, we look at the different factors to see when they equal 0. So it's 2 sine x plus 1 equals 0. If I start solving that out, I get sine x, I subtract 1 divided by 2, so I get negative 1/2. And then I think on my unit circle, where's my sine negative 1/2? There are two spots. 7 pi over 6 and 11 pi over 6, and then you got to remember to do plus or minus 2 pi k, because if you go around the circle you're going to have a different radian, but it's going to be coterminal. It's going to be at the same spot. Same thing over here. Sine x equals 1 is what you're going to be solving for, and that only happens at the very top here. So your other answer is not 3 pi over 2, it's going to be pi over 2 plus or minus 2 pi k. So overall, you have kind of three starting points, and then you do plus or minus 2 pi k. Alright, so now you should try this. So let's say someone gave you sine of 2x equals cosine of x. So remember, you need to have everything equal to 0. And you need a factor to solve. You shouldn't be dividing by anything. So try using a double angle formula. Get it equal to 0, factor, see what you can get. Okay, sine of 2x has only one option. Okay, and I'm going to do two things at once. I'm replacing sine 2x with this double angle identity, but I'm also going to subtract cosine to the other side. Now a lot of people will want to, before I had subtracted cosine over, divide by cosine on both sides, because there will be a cosine on both sides. But don't do that. Again, the reason for that is, say you have x squared equals x. Someone might just decide to divide by x and you get x equals 1. But actually, when you have a quadratic like this, you should be getting two answers. And when you divide by x, you're actually getting rid of one of the answers, the answer being 0. Instead, you should actually do x squared minus x equals 0, subtract it over, and then factor. Now, you can see that there's two answers, x equals 1 and x equals 0. So don't do this dividing on both sides. Move everything to one side and then factor. Okay, now I'm going to factor out a cosine. And I should have 2 sine of x minus 1 left over. Now, if we solve, cosine x is 0 at pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2 plus or minus 2 pi k. Also, this is going to turn into sine x equals 1/2 because you add the 1 over when you set it equal to 0 and divide by 2. So x here is going to be pi over 6 and 5 pi over 6 plus or minus 2 pi k. Okay, now one thing to note here, these answers here could be written a different way because they are exactly opposite on the unit circle. So if you think about it, this is pi over 2, this is 3 pi over 2. You could start with pi over 2, then add a pi, and then add another pi. So instead of writing this, a lot of people will write pi over 2 plus or minus pi k, because you could add just pi k and you could include both answers. So just be aware that you might have it written out like this.